Hello, hello, hello! Welcome to Synergetic Games. My name is Natalie, and today we are going to be playing... Sorry, let me adjust my webcam. We are not going to be playing anything. We are doing a special Sunday stream, which I don't normally do. I stopped streaming on Sundays some time ago, but I've been really busy during the week this week, and thank you so much for the hype! So, I've been super busy during the week this week, so I felt kind of bad, so I'm gonna do a couple of weeks of special weekend streams until the week after next, at which point things should be back to normal. But for the time being, I was asked to do a special storytime stream in which we are just gonna read the community storybook of choice, which admittedly I chose when I started this thing, but you know, if you redeem community story time during the stream, how does that work? I don't know. I don't think that one works, because we'll already be doing that. I don't know. Maybe it's like when I want to stop, I'll just read a couple extra pages, and then I'll just, you know, put a hard stop after that. I don't know. I don't want to make promises, but it's going to be a shorter stream than usual. Probably not more than an hour and a half, because I feel like A, that's a lot of reading, and B, that's a lot of reading. And I only have so much tea. But I hope you're at least comfortable or in bed or doing something fun and interesting. But yeah, so we're just I'm not doing a long stream because I've been super busy this evening, and I'm quite not low energy, but also I don't want to invest time in a game when I probably don't have the energy for that, but I've got the energy for this, but you know, which is great. So I was asked to do this specially by the community, and I thought, yeah, sure, good idea. Because I know not a lot of, like, plenty of people aren't the biggest fan of Harry Potter, which is fine. That's up to and including my mod. But I didn't know that at the time. He was not my mod. So we're gonna get through this, and then the community, well, I've already had a book suggested to me, actually. Something that does sound interesting. What was it called? The Kingdom of the Sea, or something like that. The Sea of Kingdoms. I think the word kingdom is in there, and the word sea. But I had that book recommended to me, and possibly even bought for me at this point. I'm 100% not sure about that. We'll see how that goes. The Little Mermaid. I would gladly read The Little Mermaid. I have a collection of Grimm's fairy tales. Unopened, actually. It's a very beautiful book. At least I think it's Grimm's. It sure is. Maybe one day I'll open it and read it to the community. But I'm gonna take my sip of tea. I think we just started a new chapter, actually, come to think of it. Oh no, we started a new chapter 4 pages ago, so we're all good. So I'm just gonna start where we left off, and I'll read the other pages. I apologize for those of you walking in and expecting the beginning of the story, but that's sadly not how this is gonna go down. We'll just backtrack the whole time. Oh yes, so this is the chapter with the flying lesson. "Come back, boys," she shouted, but Neville was rising straight up like a cork shot out of a bottle. 12 feet, 20 feet. Harry saw his scared white face looking down at the ground, falling away. Saw him gasp, slip sideways off the broom, and wham! A thud and a nasty crack, and Neville lay, face down, on the ground in a heap. His broomstick was still rising higher and higher and started to drift lazily towards the Forbidden Forest and out of sight. Madame Hooch was bending over Neville, her face as white as his. "Broken wrist," Harry heard her mutter. "Come on, boy. That's all right. Up you get." She turned to the rest of the class. "None of you is to move while I take this boy to the hospital wing. You leave those brooms where they are, or you'll be out of Hogwarts before you can say Quidditch. Come on, dear." Neville, his face tear-streaked, clutching at his wrist, hobbled off with Madame Hooch, who had her arm around him. No sooner were they out of earshot than Malfoy burst into laughter. "Did you see his face? The great lump!" The other Slytherins joined in. "Shut up, Malfoy," snapped Parvati Patil. "Oh, sticking up for Longbottom," said Pansy Parkinson, a hard-faced Slytherin girl. "Never thought you'd like little fat... like fat little crybabies, Parvati." "Look," said Harry, darting forward and snatching something out of the grass. "It's that stupid thing Longbottom's Gran sent him." The Remember-All glittered in the sun as he held it up. "Give that here, Malfoy," said Harry quietly. Everyone stopped talking to watch. Malfoy smiled nastily. "I think I'll leave it somewhere for Longbottom to collect. How about up a tree?" "Give it here," Harry yelled. But Malfoy had leapt onto his broomstick and taken off. He hadn't been lying. He could fly. He could fly well, hovering level with the topmost branches of an oak, he called, "Come and get it, Potter." Harry grabbed his broom. "No!" shouted Hermione Granger. "Madame Hooch told us not to move. You'll get us all into trouble." Harry ignored her. Blood was pounding in his ears. He mounted the broom and kicked hard against the ground, and up he went. Up he soared. Air rushed through his hair, and his robes whipped out behind him. Sorry, I'm just really awkwardly pacing myself. I'm thinking too much about this cup of tea, which I really, really want. Give me a moment. You know the worst thing about this? You do gotta mod this channel. This is up to you. In a rush of fierce joy, he realized he'd found something he could do without being taught. This was easy. This was wonderful. He pulled his broomstick up a little to take it even higher, and heard screams and gasps of girls back on the ground, and an admiring whoop from Ron. He turned his broomstick sharply to face Malfoy in midair. Malfoy looked stunned. "Give it here," Harry called, "or I'll knock you off your broom." "Oh, yeah?" said Malfoy, trying to sneer, but looking worried. Harry knew, somehow, what to do. He leant forward and grasped the broom tightly in his hands, and it shot towards Malfoy like a javelin. Malfoy only just got out of the way in time. Harry made a sharp about turn and held the broom steady. A few people below were clapping. "No Crabbe and Goyle up here to save your neck, Malfoy," Harry called. The same thought seemed to have struck Malfoy. "Catch it if you can, then," he called, and threw the glass ball high into the air and streaked back towards the ground. Harry saw, as though in slow motion, the ball rise up in the air and then start to fall. He leant forward and pointed his broom handle down. Next second, he was gathering speed in a steep dive, racing the ball. Wind whistled in his ears, mingling with the screams of people watching. He stretched out his hand. A foot from the ground, he caught it, just in time to pull his broom straight. And he toppled gently onto the ground, with the Remember-All clutched safely in his fist. "Harry Potter!" His heart sank faster than he'd just dived. Professor McGonagall was running toward them. He got to his feet, trembling. "Never! In all my time at Hogwarts!" Professor McGonagall was almost speechless with shock, and her glasses flashed furiously. "How dare you! Might have broken your neck." "It was his fault, Professor." "Be quiet, Miss Patel." "But Malfoy—" "That's enough, Mr. Weasley." Potter, follow me. Harry caught sight of Malfoy, Crabbe and Goyle's triumphant faces. Malfoy, Crabbe and Goyle's triumphant faces as he left, walking numbly in Professor McGonagall's wake as she strode towards the castle. He was going to be expelled. He just knew it. He wanted to say something to defend himself, but there seemed to be something wrong with his voice. Professor McGonagall was sweeping along without even looking at him. He had to jog to keep up. Now he'd done it. He hadn't even lasted 2 weeks. He'd be packing his bags in 10 minutes. What would the Dursleys say when he turned up on the doorstep? Up the front steps, up the marble staircase inside, and still Professor McGonagall didn't say a word to him. She wrenched open the doors and marched along the corridors with Harry trotting miserably behind her. Maybe she was taking him to Dumbledore. He thought of Hagrid, expelled but allowed to stay on as a gameskeeper. Perhaps he could be Hagrid's assistant. His stomach twisted as he imagined it, watching Ron and the others becoming wizards while he stumped around the grounds, carrying Hagrid's bag. Professor McGonagall stopped outside a classroom. She opened the door and poked her head inside. "Excuse me, Professor Flitwick, could I borrow Wood for a moment?" Well, in the movie, he's actually in Professor Quirrell's classroom, but okay. That's okay. The movies are allowed to be wrong. They're movies. Can I borrow Wood for a moment? Wood? Thought Harry, bewildered. Was Wood a cane she was going to use on him? But Wood turned out to be a person, a burly 5th-year boy who came out of Flitwick's class looking confused. "Follow me, you two," said Professor McGonagall, and they marched up the corridor, Wood looking curiously at Harry. "In here." Professor McGonagall pointed them into a classroom which was empty except for Peeves, who was busy writing rude words on the blackboard. "Out, Peeves!" she barked. Peeves threw the chalk into a bin, which clanged loudly, and he swooped out, cursing. Professor McGonagall slammed the door behind him and turned to face the 2 boys. "Potter, this is Oliver Wood. Wood, I found you a seeker." Wood's expression changed from puzzlement to delight. "Are you serious, Professor?" "Absolutely," said Professor McGonagall crisply. "The boy's a natural. I've never seen anything like it. Is that your first time on a broomstick, Potter?" Harry nodded silently. He didn't have a clue what was going on, but he didn't seem to be being expelled, and some of the feeling started to come back to his legs. He caught that thing in his hand after a 50-foot dive, Professor McGonagall told Wood. "Didn't even scratch himself. Charlie Weasley couldn't have done it." Wood was now looking as though all his dreams had come true at once. Ever seen a game of Quidditch, Potter?" he asked excitedly. Wood's captain of the Gryffindor team, Professor McGonagall explained. "He's just the build for a Seeker too," said Wood, now even walking around Harry and staring at him. "Light, speedy. We'll have to get him a decent broom, Professor. A Nimbus 2000 or a Clean Sweep 7, I'd say. I shall speak to Professor Dumbledore and see if I can't bend the first-year rule. Heavens, no. Heaven knows we need a better team than last year. Flattened in the last match by Slytherin. I couldn't look Severus Snape in the face for weeks." Professor McGonagall peered sternly over her glasses at Harry. I want to hear you're training hard, Potter, or I may change my mind about punishing you." Then she suddenly smiled. "Your father would have been proud," she said. "He was an excellent Quidditch player himself." "You're joking!" It was dinner time. Harry had just finished telling Ron what had happened when he'd left the grounds with Professor McGonagall. Ron had a piece of steak and kidney pie halfway into his mouth, but he'd forgotten all about it. "Seeker," he said, "but first years never. You must be the youngest house player in about a century," said Harry, shoveling pie into his mouth. He felt particularly hungry after the excitement of the afternoon. Wood told me. Ron was so amazed, so impressed, he just sat and gaped at Harry. "I start training next week," said Harry. "Only don't tell anyone. Wood wants to keep it a secret." Pages. Fred and George Weasley now came into the hall, spotted Harry, and hurried over. "Well done," said George in a low voice. "Wood told us. We're on the team too. Beat us." "I tell you, we're going to win that Quidditch match for sure this year," said Fred. "We haven't won since Charlie left, but this year's team is going to be brilliant. You must be good, Harry. Wood was almost skipping when he told us." "Anyway, we've got to go. Lee Jordan reckons he's found a new secret passageway out of the school. Bet it's that one behind the statue of Gregory the Smarmy that we found in our first week. See you." Fred and George had hardly disappeared when someone far less welcome turned up. Malfoy, flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. "Having a last meal, Potter? When are you getting the train back to the Muggles?" "You're a lot braver now you're back on the ground and you've got your little friends with you," said Harry coldly. There was, of course, nothing at all little about Crabbe and Goyle, but as the high table was full of teachers, neither of them could do more than crack their knuckles and scowl. "I'd take you all on any time on my own," Hang on. "I'd take you on any time on my own," said Malfoy. "Tonight, if you want. Wizard's duel. Wands only, no contact." "What's the matter? Never heard of a wizard's duel before, I suppose." "Of course he has," said Ron, wheeling around. "I'm his second. Who's yours?" Malfoy looked at Crabbe and Goyle, sizing them up. "Crabbe," he said. "Midnight, all right. We'll meet you in the trophy room. That's always unlocked." When Malfoy had gone, Ron and Harry looked at each other. "What's a wizard's duel?" said Harry. "What do you mean, you're my second?" "Well, a second's there to take over if you die," said Ron casually. Getting started at last on his cold pie. Catching the look on Harry's face, he added quickly, "But people only die in proper duels. You know, with real wizards." "The most you and Malfoy will be able to do is send sparks at each other. Neither of you knows enough magic to do any real damage. I bet he expected you to refuse anyway." And what if I wave my wand and nothing happens?" "Throw it away and punch him on the nose," Ron suggested. "Excuse me." They both looked up. It was Hermione Granger. Sorry, I'm just super old. I'm just crouching. Slouching, I mean. They both looked up. It was Hermione Granger. "Can't a person eat in peace in this place?" said Ron. Hermione ignored him and spoke to Harry. "I couldn't help overhearing what you and Malfoy were saying." "Bet you could," Ron muttered. "And you mustn't go wandering around the school at night. Think of the points you'll lose, Gryffindor, if you're caught. And you're bound to be. It's really very selfish of you." "And it's really none of your business," said Harry. "Goodbye," said Ron. All the same, it wasn't what you'd call the perfect end to the day, Harry thought, as he lay awake much later, listening to Dean and Seamus falling asleep. Neville wasn't back from the hospital wing. Ron had spent all evening giving him advice such as, "If he tries to curse you, you'd better dodge it, because I can't remember how to block them." There was a very good chance they were going to get caught by Filch or Mrs. Norris, and Harry felt he was pushing his luck, breaking another school rule today. On the other hand, Malfoy's sneering face kept looming out of the darkness. This was his big chance to beat Malfoy face to face. Couldn't miss it. 11:30, Ron muttered at last. "We'd better go." They pulled on their dressing gowns, picked up their wands, and crept across the tower room. down the spiral staircase and into the Gryffindor common room. A few embers were still glowing in the fireplace, turning all the armchairs into hunched black shadows. They had almost reached the portrait hall when a voice spoke from the chair nearest them. "I can't believe you're going to do this, Harry." A lamp flicked on. It was Hermione Granger, wearing a pink dressing gown and a frown. "You," said Ron furiously, "go back to bed." "I almost told your brother," Hermione snapped. "Percy, he's a prefect. He'd put a stop to this." Harry couldn't believe anyone could be so infuriating. Interfering, I apologize. I cannot do words. "Come on," he said to Ron, pushing open the portrait of the fat lady and climbing through the hole. Hermione wasn't going to give up that easily. She followed Ron through the portrait hole, hissing at them like an angry goose. "Don't you care about Gryffindor? Do you only care about yourselves? I don't want Slytherin to win the House Cup, and you'll lose all the points I got from Professor McGonagall for knowing about switching spells. Go away!" "All right, but I warned you. You just remember what I said when you're on the train home tomorrow. You're so..." But what they were, they didn't find out. Hermione had turned to the portrait of the fat lady to get back inside and found herself facing an empty painting. The fat lady had gone on a nighttime visit, and Hermione was locked out of the Gryffindor Tower. "Now what am I going to do?" she asked shrilly. "That's your problem," said Ron. "We've got to go. We're going to be late." Harry hadn't even reached the end of the corridor when Hermione caught up with them. "I'm coming with you," she said. "You are not." "Do you think I'm going to stand out here and wait for Filch to catch me? If he finds all three of us, I'll tell him the truth, that I was trying to stop you, and you can back me up." "You've got some nerve," said Ron loudly. "Shut up, both of you," said Harry sharply. "I heard something." It was a sort of snuffling. "Mrs. Norris?" breathed Ron, squinting through the dark. It wasn't Mrs. Norris. It was Neville. He was curled up on the floor, fast asleep, but jerked suddenly awake as they crept nearer. "Thank goodness you found me. I've been out here for hours. I couldn't remember the new password to get into bed." "Keep your voice down, Neville. The password's pigs now. But it won't help you now. The fat lady's gone off somewhere." "How's your arm?" said Harry. "Fine," said Neville, showing them. "Madame Pomfrey mended it in about a minute." "Good. Well, look, Neville. We've got to be somewhere. We'll see you later." "Don't leave me," said Neville, scrambling to his feet. "I don't want to stay out here alone. The bloody Baron's been past twice already." Ron looked at his watch and then glared furiously at Hermione and Neville. "If either of you get us caught, I'll never rest until I've learnt that curse of the bogies Krill told us about and use it on you." Hermione opened her mouth, perhaps to tell Ron exactly how to use the curse of the bogies, but Harry hissed at her to be quiet and beckoned them all forward. They flitted along the corridors, striped with bars of moon. Okay, it is striped. My brain cannot read the word striped, apparently. Striped with bars of moonlight from the high windows. At every turn, Harry expected to run into Filch or Mrs. Norris, but they were lucky. They sped up a staircase to the third floor and tiptoed towards the trophy room. Malfoy and Crabbe weren't there yet. The crystal trophy cases glimmered where the moonlight caught them. Cups, shields, plates, and statues winked silver and gold in the darkness. They edged along the walls, keeping their eyes on the doors at either end of the room. Harry took out his wand in case Malfoy leapt in and started at once. The minutes crept by. "He's late. Maybe he chickened out," Ron whispered. Then a noise in the next room made them jump. Harry had only just raised his wand when they heard someone speak, and it wasn't Malfoy. "Sniff around, my sweet. They might be lurking in a corner." It was Filch speaking to Mrs. Norris. Horror-struck, Harry waved madly at the other three to follow him as quickly as possible. They scurried silently towards the door, away from Filch's voice. Neville's robes had barely whipped around a corner when they heard Filch enter the trophy room. "They're in here somewhere," they heard him mutter. "Probably hiding." "This way," Harry mouthed to the others, and, petrified, they began to creep down a long gallery full of suits of armour. They could hear Filch getting nearer. Neville suddenly let out a frightened squeak and broke into a run. He tripped and grabbed Ron around the waist, and the pair of them toppled right into a suit of armour. The clanging and crashing were enough to wake the whole castle. "Run!" Harry yelled, and the four of them sprinted down the gallery, not looking back to see whether Filch was following. They swung around the doorpost and galloped down one corridor, then another. Harry in the lead without any idea where they were going. They ripped through a tapestry and found themselves in a hidden passageway, hurtled along it, and came out near their charms classroom, which they knew was miles from the trophy room. "I think we've lost them," Harry panted, leaning against the cold wall and wiping his forehead. Neville was bent double, wheezing and spluttering. "I told you," Hermione gasped, clutching at the stitch in her chest. "I told you." "You've got to get back to Gryffindor Tower," said Ron, "quickly as possible." "Malfoy tricked you," Hermione said to Harry. "You realise that, don't you? He was never going to meet you. Filch knew someone was going to be in the trophy room. Malfoy must have tipped him off." Harry thought she was probably right, but he wasn't going to tell her that. "Let's go." It wasn't going to be that simple. They hadn't gone more than a dozen paces when a doorknob rattled and something came shooting out of a classroom in front of them. It was Peeves. He caught sight of them and gave a squeal of delight. "Shut up, Peeves! Please, you'll get us thrown out!" Peeves cackled. "Wandering around at midnight, April firsties? Tut, tut, tut! Naughty, naughty, you'll get caughty!" Oh dear. "Not if you don't give us away, Peeves, please." "Should tell Filch I should," said Peeves in a saintly voice, but his eyes glittered wickedly. "It's for your own good, you know." "Get out of the way," snapped Ron, taking a swipe at Peeves. This was a big mistake. "Students out of bed," Peeves bellowed. "Students out of bed down the charms corridor." Ducking under Peeves, they ran for their lives right to the end of the corridor, where they slammed into a door. And it was locked. "This is it," Ron moaned as they pushed helplessly at the door. "We're done for. This is the end." They could hear footsteps, Filch running as fast as he could towards Peeves' shouts. "Oh, gotta move this. It's not a good camera angle. I apologize. "Oh, move over!" Hermione snarled. She grabbed Harry's wand, tapped the lock, and whispered, "Alohomora!" The lock clicked and the door swung open. They piled through it and shut it quickly, pressing their ears against it, listening. "Which way did they go, Peeves?" Filch was saying. "Quick, tell me. Say, please." "Don't mess me about, Peeves. Now where did they go?" "Shan't say nothing if you don't say please," said Peeves in his annoying sing-song voice. "All right, please." "Nothing." "Ha ha. Told you I wouldn't say nothing if you didn't say please. Ha 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 ha." And they heard the sound of Peeves whooshing away and Filch cursing in rage. "He thinks this door is locked," whispered Harry. "I think we'll be okay. Get off, Neville!" Neville had been tugging on the sleeve of Harry's dressing gown for the last minute. "What?" Harry turned around and saw, quite clearly, what? For a moment he was sure he was walking into a nightmare. This was too much, on top of everything that had happened so far. They weren't in a room, as he supposed. They were in a corridor, the forbidden corridor on the 3rd floor, and now they knew why it was forbidden. They were looking straight into the eyes of a monstrous dog, with a 3-head. A dog which filled the whole space between the ceiling and the floor. It had 3 heads, 3 pairs of rolling, mad eyes, 3 noses, twitching and quivering in their directions, 3 drooling mouths, saliva hanging in slippery ropes from yellowish fangs. It was standing quite still, all 6 eyes staring at them, and Harry knew that the only reason they weren't already dead was that their sudden appearance had taken it by surprise. But it was quickly getting over that. There was no mistaking what those thunderous growls meant. Harry groped for the doorknob. Between Filch and death, he'd take Filch. They fell backwards. Harry slammed the door shut, and they ran. They almost flew back down the corridor. Filch must have hurried off to look for them somewhere else because they didn't see him anywhere, but they hardly cared. All they wanted to do was put as much space as possible between them and that monster. They didn't stop running until they reached the portrait of the fat lady on the 7th floor. "Where on earth have you all been?" she asked, looking at their dressing gowns hanging off their shoulders and their flushed, sweaty faces. "Never mind that! Pig snout! Pig snout!" Harry panted, and the portrait swung forward. They scrambled into the common room and collapsed, trembling, into armchairs. It was a while before any of them said anything. Neville, indeed, looked as if he would never speak again. "What do they think they're doing, keeping a thing like that locked up in a school?" said Ron finally. "If any dog needs exercise, that one does." Hermione had got both her breath and her bad temper back again. "You don't use your eyes, any of you, do you?" she snapped. "Didn't you see what it was standing on? The floor?" suggested Harry. "I wasn't looking at its feet. I was too busy with its heads." "No, not the floor. It was standing on a trap door. It's obviously guarding something." She stood up, glaring at them. "I hope you're pleased with yourselves. We could all have been killed, or worse, expelled. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to bed." Ron stared after her, his mouth open. "No, we don't mind," he said. "You'd think we dragged her along, wouldn't you?" "Hi, Starbreeze. How you been?" "How's life? Tell me everything, all of your secrets." Thank you, thank you, thank you. But Hermione had given Harry something else to think about. As he climbed back into bed, the dog was guarding something. What had Hagrid said? Gringotts was the safest place in the world for something you wanted to hide, except perhaps Hogwarts? It looked as though Harry had found out where the grubby little package from Vault 713 was. "Oh, bless you. We're happy to have you here too, sweetie. I'm good. Little tired. I'm not sure how long we'll be really reading for, but we've just finished chapter 9, so we're going strong. I'm glad you're here. Well, welcome to the stream, sweetie." Chapter 10, Halloween. Malfoy couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Harry and Ron still at Hogwarts the next day, looking tired but perfectly cheerful. Indeed, by next morning Harry and Ron thought that meeting the 3-headed dog had been an excellent adventure, and they were quite keen to have another one. In the meantime, Harry filled Ron in about the package that seemed to have been moved from Gringotts to Hogwarts. and they spent a lot of time wondering what could possibly need such heavy protection. "It's either really valuable or really dangerous," said Ron. "Or both," said Harry. But as they all knew for sure about... What? Pardon me, my brain just needs to process this sentence. But as they all knew for sure about the mysterious object... But as all they knew for sure... Okay, I got it now. But as all they knew for sure about this mysterious object was that it was about 2 inches long, they didn't have much chance of guessing what it was without further clues. Neither Neville nor Hermione showed the slightest interest in what lay beneath the dog and the trap door. All Neville cared about was never going near the dog again. Which is fair, let's be real. Hermione was now refusing to speak to Harry and Ron, but she was such a bossy know-it-all that they saw this as an added bonus. All they really wanted now was a way of getting back at Malfoy. And to their great delight, just such a thing arrived with the post a week later. As the owls flooded into the Great Hall as usual, everyone's attention was caught at once by a long, thin package carried by 6 large screech owls. Harry was just as interested as everyone else to see what was in the large parcel, and was amazed when the owls soared down and dropped it right in front of him, knocking his bacon to the floor. They had hardly fluttered out of the way when another owl dropped a letter on top of the parcel. Harry ripped open the letter first, which was lucky, because it said, "Do not open the parcel at the table. It contains your new Nimbus 2000, but I don't want everybody knowing you've got a broomstick, or they'll all want one. Oliver Wood will meet you tonight on the Quidditch pitch at 7 o'clock for your first training session. Professor McGonagall." Harry had difficulty hiding his glee as he handed the note to Ron to read. "The Nimbus 2000! Ron moaned enviously. "I've never even touched one." They left the hall quickly, wanting to unwrap the broomstick in private before their first lesson. But halfway across the entrance hall, they found the way upstairs barred by Crabbe and Goyle. Malfoy seized the package from Harry and felt it. "That's a broomstick," he said, throwing it back to Harry with a mixture of jealousy and spite on his face. "You'll be in for it this time, Potter. First years aren't allowed them." Ron couldn't resist. "It's not any old broomstick," he said. "It's a Nimbus 2000. "What did you say you've got at home, Malfoy? A Comet 260? Ron grinned at Harry. "Comets look flashy, but they're not in the same league as the Nimbus." "What would you know about it, Weasley? You couldn't afford half the handle." Malfoy snapped back. "I suppose you and your brothers have to save up twig by twig." Before Ron could answer, Professor Flitwick appeared at Malfoy's elbow. "Not arguing, I hope, boys," he squeaked. "Potter's been sent a broomstick, Professor," Malfoy said quickly. Yes, that's right," said Professor Flitwick, beaming at Harry. "Professor McGonagall told me all about the special circumstances, Potter. And what model is it?" "The Nimbus 2000, sir," said Harry, fighting not to laugh at the look of horror on Malfoy's face. "And it's really thanks to Malfoy here that I've got it," he added. Harry and Ron headed upstairs, smothering their laughter at Malfoy's obvious rage and confusion. "Well, it's true," Harry chortled as they reached the top of the marble staircase. "If he hadn't stolen Neville's Remember-All, I wouldn't be in the team." "So I suppose you think that's a reward for breaking the rules?" came an angry voice from just behind them. Hermione was stomping up the stairs, looking disapprovingly at the package in Harry's hand. "I thought you weren't speaking to us," said Harry. "Yes, don't stop now," said Ron. "It's doing us so much good." Hermione marched away with her nose in the air. Harry had a lot of trouble keeping his mind on lessons that day. It kept wandering up to the dormitory where his new broomstick was lying under his bed, or straying off to the Quidditch pitch where he'd be learning to play that night. He bolted his dinner that evening without noticing what he was eating, and then rushed upstairs with Ron to unwrap the Nimbus 2000 at last. Wow, Ron sighed as the broom rolled onto Harry's bedspread. Even Harry, who knew nothing about the different brooms, thought it looked wonderful, sleek and shiny with a mahogany handle. It was long and tall. It had a long tail of neat straight twigs, a Nimbus 2000 written in gold near the top. As 7 o'clock drew nearer, Harry left the castle, and set off towards the Quidditch pitch in the dusk. He'd never been inside the stadium before. Hundreds of seats were raised in stands around the pitch so that the spectators were high enough to see what was going on. At either end of the pitch, there were 3 golden poles with hoops on the end. They reminded Harry a little of plastic sticks Muggle children blew bubbles through, except they were 50 feet high. Too eager to fly again to wait for wood, Harry mounted his broomstick and kicked off the ground. What a feeling! He swooped in and out of the goalposts and then sped up and down the pitch. The Nimbus 2000 turned wherever he wanted at his slightest touch. "Hey, Potter, come down!" Oliver Wood had arrived. He was carrying a large wooden crate under his arm. Harry landed next to him. "Very nice," said Wood, his eyes glinting. "I see what McGonagall meant. You really are a natural. I'm just going to teach you the rules this evening. Then you'll be joining the team for practice 3 times a week." He opened the crate. Inside were 4 different sized balls. "Right," said Wood. "Now Quidditch is easy enough to understand, even if it's not too easy to play. There are 7 players on each side. 3 of them are called chasers." 3 chasers," Harry repeated as Wood took out a bright red ball about the size of a football. "This ball's called the quaffle," said Wood. "The chasers throw the quaffle to each other and try to get it through one of the hoops to score a goal. 10 points for every time a quaffle goes through one of the hoops. Follow me? Chasers throw the quaffle and put it through the hoops to score," Harry recited. "So that's sort of like basketball on broomsticks with 6 hoops, isn't it?" "What's basketball?" said Wood curiously. "Never mind," said Harry quickly. Now there's another player on each side who's called the keeper. I'm the keeper for Gryffindor. I have to fly around the hoops and stop the other teams from scoring. 3 chasers, 1 keeper," said Harry, who was determined to remember it all. And they play with the quaffle. "Okay, got it. So what are they for?" He pointed at the 3 balls left inside the box. "I'll show you now," said Wood. "Take this." He handed Harry a small club a bit like a rounder's bat. "I'm going to show you what the bludgers do," Wood said. "These 2 are the bludgers." He showed Harry 2 identical balls, jet black and slightly smaller than the red quaffle. Harry noticed that they seemed to be straining to escape the straps holding them inside the box. "Stand back," Wood warned Harry, and bent down and freed one of the bludgers. At once the black ball rose high into the air and then pelted straight at Harry's face. Harry swung at it with the bat to stop it breaking his nose, and sent it zigzagging away into the air. It zoomed around their heads and then shot at Wood, who dived on top of it and managed to pin it to the ground. "See," Wood panted, forcing the struggling bludger back into the crate and strapping it down safely. The bludgers rocket around trying to knock players off their brooms. That's why you have 2 beaters on each team. The Weasley twins are ours. It's their job to protect their side from the bludgers and try to knock them towards the other team. So, you think you've got all that? 3 chasers try to score with the quaffle, the keeper guards the goalpost, the beaters keep the bludgers away from their team. Harry reeled off. "Very good," said Wood. Have the bludgers ever killed anyone?" Harry asked. He's hoping he sounded offhand. "Never at Hogwarts. We've had a couple broken jaws, but nothing worse than that. Now, the last member of the team is the Seeker. That's you. And you don't have to worry about the quaffle or the bludgers, unless they crack my head open. Don't worry, the Weasleys are more than a match for the bludgers. I mean, they're like a pair of human bludgers themselves." Stephen Fry female version. I feel like I'm much worse than Stephen Fry. He can at least read in a sentence, but to be honest, I feel like when they're recording those things, they practice a lot and don't stumble over their sentences. But thank you, I do appreciate it. Where was I? Okay, unless they crack my head open. Human bludgers themselves. Okay, cool. Wood reached into the crate and took out the 4th and last ball. Compared to the quaffle and the bludgers, it was tiny, about the size of a large walnut. It was bright gold and had little fluttering silver wings. "This," said Wood, "is the golden snitch, and it's the most important ball of the lot. It's very hard to catch because it's so fast and difficult to see. It's the Seeker's job to catch it. You've got to weave in and out of the chasers, beaters, bludgers, and quaffle to get it before the other team's Seeker, because whichever Seeker catches the snitch wins his team an extra 150 points. So they nearly always win. That's why the Seekers get fouled so much. A game of Quidditch only ends when the snitch is caught. So it can go on for ages. I think the record is 3 months. They had to keep bringing on substitutes so the players could get some sleep." Well, that's it. Any questions? Yes, professionals definitely have to rehearse before the final version is recorded. Yeah. I mean, I believe so. It would be probably a bit ridiculous to get to imagine people getting it right in one go. But everybody makes mistakes, so it's the joys of recording things, so you can do it many, many times. Harry shook his head. He understood what he had to do all right. It was doing it that was going to be the problem. "We won't practice with the snitch yet," said Wood, carefully shutting it back inside the crate. "It's too dark. We might lose it. Let's try you out with a few of these." Aw, thank you. Maybe I should probably do some dramatic readings on YouTube. Let's see how it goes. Where was I? Okay. He pulled a bag of ordinary golf balls out of his pocket. And then a few minutes later, he and Harry were up in the air, Wood throwing the golf balls as hard as he could in every direction for Harry to catch. Harry didn't miss a single one, and Wood was delighted. After half an hour, night had really fallen, and they couldn't carry on. That Quidditch couple We'll have our name on it this year, said Wood happily as they trudged back up to the castle. I wouldn't be surprised if you turn out to be better than Charlie Weasley. And he could have played for England if he hadn't gone off chasing dragons. To be fair, if I were Charlie, I'd go chasing dragons. I love dragons. I wish that they were like... If only one mythical creature in the world could exist, it would be dragons. For me. It would be my choice. Unicorns can just continue to be fictional for all I care. I just want a dragon. I wouldn't even be mad if it ate me. Who? Ron? Where was I? We hadn't gone chasing dragons. Perhaps it was because he was now so busy. What with Quidditch practice 3 evenings a week on top of all his homework, but Harry could hardly believe it when he realised that he'd already been at Hogwarts 2 months. The castle felt more like home than Privet Drive ever had done. Had ever done. Pardon me. It works sense either way. But, had ever done. His lessons, too, were becoming more and more interesting now that they had mastered the basics. On Halloween morning, they woke up to the delicious smell of baking pumpkin wafting through the corridors. Even better, Professor Flitwick announced that in charms that he thought they were ready to start making objects fly. Something they had all been dying to try since they'd seen him make Neville's toad zoom around the classroom. Professor Flitwick put the class into pairs to practice. Harry's partner was Seamus Finnegan, which was a relief because Neville had been trying to catch his eye. Ron, however, was to be working with Hermione Granger. It was hard to tell whether Ron or Hermione was angrier about this. She hadn't spoken to either of them since the day Harry's broomstick had arrived. Now, don't forget that nice wrist movement we've been practicing, squeaked Professor Flitwick, perched on top of his pile of books as usual. Swish and flick. Remember? Swish and flick. And saying the magic words properly is very important too. Never forget Wizard Barufio, who said S instead of F, and found himself on the floor with a buffalo on his chest. It was very difficult. Harry and Seamus swished and flicked, but the feather they were supposed to be sending skyward just lay on the desktop. Seamus got so impatient that he prodded it with his wand to set fire to it. Harry had put it out with his hat. Ron at the next table wasn't having much more luck. Wingardium Leviosa, he shouted, waving his arms like a windmill. You're saying it wrong, Harry heard Hermione snap. It's Wingardium Leviosa. Make the gar nice and long. You do it then, if you're so clever, Ron snarled. Hermione rolled up the sleeves of her gown, flicked her wand, and said, Wingardium Leviosa. Their feather rose off the desk and hovered about 4 feet above their heads. Oh, well done, cried Professor Flitwick, clapping. Everyone see here, Miss Granger's done it. Ron was in a very bad temper by the end of the class. It's no wonder no one can stand her, he said to Harry, as they pushed their way into the crowded corridor. She's a nightmare, honestly. Someone knocked into Harry as they hurried past them. It was Hermione. Harry caught a glimpse of her face. and was startled to see that she was in tears. "I think she heard you." "So?" said Ron, but he looked a bit uncomfortable. "She must have noticed she's got no friends." Hermione didn't turn up for the next class and wasn't seen all afternoon. On their way down to the Great Hall for the Halloween feast, Harry and Ron overheard Parvati Patel telling her friend Lavender that Hermione was crying in the girls' toilets and wanted to be left alone. Ron looked still more awkward at this, but a moment later they had entered the Great Hall, where the Halloween decorations put Hermione out of their minds. 1,000 live bats fluttered up from the walls. Oh god, that seems so unsanitary. And ceiling. While 1,000 more swooped over the tables in low black clouds, making the candles in the pumpkins stutter. The feast appeared suddenly on golden plates, as it had at the start of term banquet. Sorry, pardon me. Words are not wishing flick, Mr. Malfoy. Words are not working. Okay, here we go. Start of term banquet. Harry was just helping himself to a jacket potato when Professor Quirrell came sprinting into the hall, his turban askew and terror on his face. Everyone stared as he reached Professor Dumbledore's chair, slumped against the table and gasped, "Troll! In the dungeons! Thought you ought to know." Then he sank to the floor in a dead faint. There was uproar. It took several purple firecrackers exploding from the end of Dumbledore's wand to bring silence. "Prefects," he rumbled, "lead your houses back to the dormitories immediately." Percy was in his element. "Follow me. Stick together, first years. No need to fear the troll if you follow my orders. Stay close behind me now. Make way, first years. Coming through. Excuse me, I'm a prefect." How could a troll get in? How could a troll get in? Harry asked as they climbed the stairs. "Don't ask me. They're supposed to be really stupid," said Ron. "Maybe Peeves let it in for a Halloween joke." They passed different groups of people hurrying in different directions. As they jostled their way through a crowd of confused Hufflepuffs, Harry suddenly grabbed Ron's arm. "I've just had a thought. Hermione. What about her? She doesn't know about the troll." Ron bit his lip. "Oh, all right," he snapped. "But Percy better not see us." Ducking down, they joined the Hufflepuffs going the other way, slipped down a deserted side corridor and hurried off towards the girls' toilets. They had just turned a corner when they heard quick footsteps behind them. "Percy!" hissed Ron, pulling Harry behind a large stone griffin. Peering around it, however, they saw not Percy, but Snape. He crossed the corridor and disappeared from view. "What's he doing?" Harry whispered. "Why isn't he down in the dungeons with the rest of the teachers? Search me." Quietly as possible, they crept along the next corridor after Snape's fading footsteps. "He's headed for the 3rd floor, Harry said. Ron held up his hand. "Can you smell something?" "Hi!" Abnock is suffering admirably. "Welcome, Chopper. We are having a story time. I hope you enjoy it. How long have you... Well, how's your day been? How are you doing, buddy?" Incidentally, we're not redeeming story time today. We're already doing it. Sorry, can you smell something? Harry sniffed and a foul stench reached his nostrils, a mixture of old socks and the kind of public toilet no one seems to clean. And then they heard it, a low grunting and the shuffling footfalls of gigantic feet. Ron pointed at the end of the passage to the left. Something huge was moving towards them. They sank into the shadows and watched it as it emerged into a patch of moonlight. It was a horrible sight. 12 feet tall, its skin was dull. Its skin was a dull granite grey. Its great, lumpy body like a boulder with its small, bald head perched on top like a coconut. It had short legs, thick as tree trunks, with flat, horny feet. I don't know. Just You've been a bit unwell. Okay. Don't worry. I hope I help. But I honestly hope you've been resting and having all the fluids. Where was I? Okay. Feet. The smell coming from it was incredible. It was holding a huge wooden club, which dragged along the floor because its arms were so long. The troll stopped next to a doorway and peered inside. It wiggled its long ears, making up its tiny mind, then slouched slowly into the room. "The key's in the lock," Harry muttered. "We could lock it in." "Good idea," said Ron nervously. They edged towards the open door, mouths dry, praying that the troll wasn't about to come out of it. With one great leap, Harry managed to grab the key, slam the door, and lock it. Yes! Flushed with their victory, they started to run up the passage. But as they reached the corridor, they heard something that made their hearts stop. A high, petrified scream. He is. He's doing good. He's being a team player right there. Petrified scream. And it was coming from the chamber they just locked up. "Oh no," said Ron, pale as the bloody Baron. "It's the girls' toilets," Harry gasped. "Hermione," they said together. It was the last thing they wanted to do, but what choice did they have? Wheeling around, they sprinted back to the door and turned the key, fumbling in their panic. Harry pulled the door open, and they ran inside. Hermione Granger was shrinking against the wall opposite, looking as if she were about to faint. The troll was advancing on her, knocking the sinks off the walls as it went. "Confuse it," Harry said desperately to Ron, and seizing a tap, he threw it hard as he could against the wall. The troll stopped a few feet from Hermione. It lumbered around, blinked stupidly to see what had made the noise. Its little mean eyes saw Harry. It hesitated, then made for him instead, lifting its club as it went. "Oi, pea-brain!" yelled Ron from the other side of the chamber, and he threw a metal pipe at it. The troll didn't even seem to notice the pipe hitting its shoulder, but it heard the yell and paused again, turning its ugly snout towards Ron instead, giving Harry time to run around it. "Come on, run! Run!" he yelled at Hermione, trying to pull her towards the door, but she couldn't move. She was still flat against the wall, her mouth open with terror. The shouting and the echoes seemed to be driving the troll berserk. It roared again and started towards Ron, who was nearest and had no way to escape. Too late for coding. "Oh, babe." Babe? Sorry. I think it might be time for bed. For both of us. Alright. I should stop saying words. I'm just gonna read the words on the page. They're safe. I'm so tired. Used to be able to code in VB and DB and C++. I have never been able to do that, so hats off to you. Um, where was I? Oh, okay. Here we are. Basically at the top of the page. Hang on. Okay. The echo seemed to be driving the troll mad. It went for work. Okay. Ron, who was nearest and had no time to escape. Harry then did something that was both very brave and very stupid. He took a great running jump and managed to fasten his arms around the troll's neck from behind. The troll couldn't feel Harry hanging there, but even a troll will notice if you stick a long bit of wood up its nose. And Harry's wand had still been in his hand when he jumped. It had gone straight up the troll, and it had gone straight up the troll's nostrils. You need more streams like this. Thank you. I don't know, it might just be a special thing. We've definitely got, like, I think they'd definitely be shorter streams than usual because this is literally constant reading, and I could really do my voice in if I do this a lot. But we'll see. We'll see. This is why the Storytime Redeem button is so important. And it had gone up the troll's nostrils. Howling with pain, the troll twisted and flailed its club, with Harry clinging to it for dear life. Any second, the troll was going to rip him off and catch him in a terrible blow with the club. Hermione had sunk to the floor in fright. Ron pulled out his own wand, not knowing what he was going to do. Oh, hi! Hi, Gray. Thank you for the sub. I hear tell of many more Barry Potter books. Is that true? I thought we'd given up on the Harry Potter, although there is a spoof book called Barry Trotter. I don't think I have it anymore, but I could definitely hunt it down. It's a weird time and I loved it. You're home again. Excellent news. Thank you so much for the resub. How you been, bud? Hang on. Harry pulled out his own wand, not knowing what he was going to do. He heard himself cry the first spell that came into his head. Wingardium Leviosa! The club flew suddenly out of the troll's hand, rose high into the air, turned slowly over, and dropped with a sickening crack on its owner's head. The troll swayed on the spot and then fell flat on its face with a thud that made the whole room tremble. Harry got to his feet. He was shaking and out of breath. Ron was standing there with his wand still raised, staring at what he'd done. It was Hermione who spoke first. Is it dead? I don't think so, said Harry. I think it's just been knocked out. He bent down and pulled his wand out of the troll's nose. It was covered in what looked like lumpy grey glue. Ugh, troll bogies. He wiped it on the troll's trousers. The sudden slamming of loud footsteps made the three of them look up. They hadn't realized what racket they had been making. But of course, someone downstairs must have heard the crashes and the troll's roars. A moment later, Professor McGonagall had come bursting into the room, closely followed by Snape, with Quirrell bringing up the rear. Quirrell took one look at the troll, let out a faint whimper, and sat quickly down on the toilet, clutching his heart. Snape bent over the troll. Professor McGonagall was looking at Ron and Harry. Harry had never seen her look so angry. Her lips were white. Hopes of winning 50 points for Gryffindor faded quickly from Harry's mind. What on earth were you thinking of? said Professor McGonagall with cold fury in her voice. Harry looked at Ron, who was still standing there with his wand in the air. You're lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory? Snape gave Harry a swift, piercing look. Harry looked at the floor. He wished Ron had put his wand down. Doesn't IRL work then? Oh god. Well, I keep telling you guys to be inventive. Hogwarts is pretty incompetent. Hi Lappy Tappy, how you been? Welcome to the stream. We're having a special story time. Hang on, let me... Oh, okay. I was just gonna check when the chapter ends, because, reasons. Okay. I actually think we're gonna end it at the end of this chapter because my voice is getting kind of painful. But there's like 50 teachers here. It's been a week. It just came out. I don't know why it happened. Sorry, hang on, here we go. Snape gave Harry a swift, piercing look. Harry looked at the floor. He wished Ron would put his wand down. Then, a small voice came out of the shadows. Please, Professor McGonagall, they were looking for me. Miss Granger! Hermione had managed to get to her feet at last. I went looking for the troll because I thought I could deal with it on my own, you know, because I've read all about them. Ron dropped his wand. Hermione Granger telling a downright lie to a teacher? If they hadn't found me, I'd be dead now. Harry stuck his wand up its nose and Ron knocked it out with its own club. They didn't have time to come and fetch anyone. It was about to finish me off when they arrived. Harry and Ron tried to look as though the story wasn't new to them. Well, in that case, said Professor McGonagall, staring at the three of them. Miss Granger, you foolish girl. How could you think of tackling a mountain troll on your own? Hermione hung her head. Harry was speechless. Hermione was the last person to do anything against the rules, and here she was pretending she had to get them both out of trouble. It was as if Snape had started handing out sweets. Miss Granger, 5 points will be taken from Gryffindor for this, said Professor McGonagall. I'm very disappointed in you. If you're not hurt at all, you'd better get off to Gryffindor Tower. Students are finishing the feast off in their houses. Hermione left. Professor McGonagall turned to Harry and Ron. Well, I still say you were lucky. But not many first years could have taken on a full-grown mountain troll. You each win Gryffindor 5 points. Professor Dumbledore will be informed of this. You may go. Hi, Tomato Sandwich. How you been? It's Tomato Sammy. Sorry, I hope that wasn't painful to listen to. We're actually almost finishing up, but welcome to the stream. How you been? They hurried off. What? They hurried out of the chamber and did not speak at all until they had climbed 2 floors up. It was a relief to be away from the smell of the troll, quite apart from anything else. We should have got more than 10 points, Harry grumbled. 5, you mean, once she's taken off Hermione's. Good of her to get us out of trouble like that, Ron admitted. Mind you, we did save her. She might not have needed saving if we hadn't locked the thing in with her, Harry reminded him. They had reached the portrait of the fat lady. Pig snout, they said, and entered. The common room was packed and noisy. Everyone was eating the food that had been sent up. Hermione, however, stood alone by the door, waiting for them. There was a very embarrassed pause. Then, none of them looking at each other, they all said thanks and hurried off to get plates. But from that moment on, Hermione Granger became their friend. There are some things you can't share without ending up liking each other, and knocking out a 12-foot mountain troll is one of them. This will be a VOD soon. It sure will. Is she? Is she not a sadist? Or one or the other? Anyway, as soon as I find my friggin' bookmark. Yeah. Seriously, where's my bookmark? I don't even know anymore. Oh, there it is. Not really a bookmark, it's just a piece of paper. But that is going to be it for now. Thank you guys so much for tolerating my reading. I hope it was at least somewhat enjoyable. It was good to get like through a massive chunk of that book. At least it felt massive to me, but then I was reading it. We've still got a ways to go though. So do remember, if you're interested in the future, we do have a button for you to redeem story time. All you gotta do is spend channel points, click the button, and say, "Please read me a story." Yeah. Don't worry about that. It will appear soon. I promise. So if you want some background noise, you can just, well, you'll find some. I promise. If you liked what you got to see, thank you so much. I do appreciate that. But for the time being, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed your story time. Hang on. Let us see. Would you guys like to be dropped off on somebody's channel to play either Stardew Valley or Resident Evil? Does that sound interesting to either one of you? Either one of you? Like, there's two of you here? Any of you? Meanwhile, other teachers are like, I'd have given them 50 points each. Yeah, McGonagall is harsh. You'll be watching the VOD. Okay, no problem. So, you know what? Stardew Valley is a classic. Okay, cool. I will drop you off at Stardew Valley, and if and when you wish to watch the VOD, it will be available to you as soon as I stop streaming, and it will also be uploaded into my YouTube archive probably at some point next week. So keep an eye out for that. If you are not subscribed to my Twitch archive channel on YouTube, please do so, you know, anything you missed might pop up there. Yes, exactly. Take care, everyone. Sleep well, and I will pop you over to do a thing. We will watch the thing. This guy he seems like a really sweet guy, very genuine. Do drop him a follow if you can, say hello. Do all the good nice things. Here we go.